A dull, salt-laden wind curled through the broken windows of Maegor's holdfast, dragging the dawn's first light across the floor like a pale ribbon. Lyanna Stark tasted it on her tongue. Brackish, metallic, tinged with soot, and knew that those scents would cling forever to this moment. The chamber stank of burning oils and charred velvet hangings, yet beneath that, like a hidden melody in a discordant chord, she could still smell winter roses crushed beneath mailed boots. Her fingers, gloveless now, raw from gripping sword and dagger, stretched across the hilts that rested in her lap. Dark Sister lay on one thigh, its infamous Valyrian edge still wet. Beside it, her own lighter blade, Castle's Frost, sat clean, as though refusing to share in regicide. The contrast pleased her in some cruel private way. It felt right that the ancient Targaryen steel should drink Targaryen blood. She had always been taught that the old gods whispered through iron and snow, and when she acted, she had heard them clearly at last. No footfalls echoed from the gallery overhead, only the settling groans of beams warped by wildfire heat. King's Landing had burned many times, yet never like this, Lyanna thought, stroking a soot-black strand of hair from her cheek. Outside, bells tolled unevenly, as if the towers themselves had forgotten the rhythm of morning. They were meant for Rhaegar's death, for tens of thousands slain on the Trident, for Elia and her babes whose fates now lay in rumor and bloodied corridors. But here, in this final hall of shadows and melted gold, the bells tolled for one man alone. Aerys Targaryen lay where he had fallen, a tangle of silver hair and scarlet brocade against the dark marble. His eyes were open, still glimmering with that glassy fever that had swallowed his mind long before steel pierced his throat. Steam crept from the wound, turning the air above him into a wavering mirage. She had thrust upward, driving Dark Sister through the cartilage and into the mad heart behind it, and when he collapsed, he made no more sound than a cinder in snow. The dying do not always scream, Lyanna realized. Sometimes they simply leave, or are taken. The Kingsguard had broken quicker than she expected. Sir Jaime Lannister, ragged, smoke-smudged, his golden hair dull as straw, had appeared first. He had watched her with a stare emptied of all youth and judgment, sword in hand yet heavy as iron gilt. Then, with no word, he turned away and slid the throne room doors closed behind him, barring her in with the Mad King he himself had left to her mercy. Mercy. Lyanna let the word circle once and die. She doubted that any among the living would name what she gave Aerys mercy, though the gods might see it otherwise. It was mercy for tens of thousands who would have burned in wildfire set alight beneath the city. Mercy for every Stark, Baratheon, Tully and Arryn soldier marching over the hills toward the capital. Perhaps it was even mercy for Aerys, if the man that had been king still cowered somewhere inside the monster's cracked shell. Yet mercy was a fragile currency. Even now, crush it too hard, and it became accusation. Lyanna felt the weight already pressing upon her shoulders like new-forged plate. She had broken oaths she never swore, the sacred but invisible bonds that kept ladies from slaying kings, and kept daughters from dragging blades forged in doom across entire dynasties. A fortnight ago, she had been the laughing wolf maid of Winterfell, a girl who danced in a blue gown at Harrenhal, and tangled in branch and bloom along the green banks of the Trident. Now she sat in a throne room awash in firelight, with a corpse at her feet and a crown glimmering 10 yards away on twisted metal. Her gaze drifted to that crown, soft curves of red gold, shaped into dragon heads devouring their own tails. It lay where it had rolled, having slipped from Aerys' skull when he collapsed. She wondered if it was warm from his fever, or cold from the marble. It seemed smaller than she had imagined, less grand than the songs. Perhaps power always looked larger from afar. Lyanna lifted Dark Sister, studied the rippling crimson along its fuller, and set the blade gently against the smooth stone floor. In its wavering reflection, pale, gaunt with weeks of flight, eyes ringed in sleepless gray, and scarcely recognized that image as the willful child Ned used to chase through the godswood back home. Back home, The phrase tugged at her heart like a fishhook. Had she won? Still, Winterfell's halls might never again feel safe after the war's harvest of corpses. Brandon was dead. Father and Rickard too. Benjen's letters spoke of raids in the north, of Karstark levies marching, of umber banners snapping beneath skies that promised snow even in spring. Ned lived. She believed that with the stubborn certainty of a last candle. But the wall that loomed before him at the neck was made not of ice and magic, but of swords, siege towers, and broken vows. War had devoured Westeros whole. Perhaps stepping from this throne room was to step into its stomach once more. The crown winked at her in the shifting light, as though some sly spirit within dared her to complete the deed. Slaying the king is only half the tale, it whispered. And tales unfinished turned to rot. Lyanna rose, legs trembling from exhaustion, and a bloom of pain at her left hip, where a stray crossbow bolt had grazed her the previous night. She sheathed Castle's frost across her back, but she left Dark Sister on the floor. Let Targaryen steel remain with its last master. She had wielded it only because prophecy, or something like prophecy, had guided her hand. The blade had served. Now it could rest. Step by soft step she crossed the blasted tiles toward the throne itself. Eris had spared no cruelty in shaping those steps. Each spike and jagged blade from a fallen foe's sword contorted into something sharp enough to Flint's fingers. She took them carefully, pressing where rust and melted slag dulled the edges. At the top loomed the Iron Throne, monstrous, leonine, hungry. In songs it shone like beaten silver in moonlight, but in truth it was a hulking thing, dark as an anvil, edges stained by generations of scabbards and sweaty palms. Lyanna paused before it, feeling its weight upon the room even when unclaimed. She thought of Rhaegar, and tears burned behind her eyelids. Not for love unconsummated. She had never quite decided what stood between them in Dorne, but for promise lost. His songs, his books, that faraway gaze fixed ever on the horizon, as though waiting for a dawn only he could see. They were gone. She had taken up arms to avenge the North, to rescue herself from rumor and chain alike, but also to ensure his father's madness would not claim more innocence. And now Rhaegar slept among the reeds of the Trident, face bathed in mud and moonlight. When they found him, his breastplate's rubies had scattered like frozen tears in spring rivers, and men still hunted those stones along the banks, hoping to turn grief into jewelry. Lyanna clenched her jaw. If Rhaegar's siblings still lived, Viserys a trembling boy somewhere across the narrow sea, the girl Daenerys born into exile, they would learn soon that both father and brother were dust. She wondered what winter such knowledge might sow in their tender spirits. The bells tolled again, closer now. She recognized the pitch. The Sept of Baelor. Perhaps the High Septon himself had taken hammer to bronze, desperate to keep pace with history. Faith is swift when crowns roll, the old women of Winterfell would say. And always there were rats beneath the Sept's tiles waiting to scurry out and feast on new hopes. Lyanna drew a breath that tasted of smoke and rose petals and placed one foot before the other. A hush fell in her heart. A hush so complete she might have been a child padding through the godswood with snowflakes tumbling around her. Ned had told her once, when she stood atop the broken tower, that the bravest thing a Stark could do was listen. And so, as she mounted that final blade-sharpened step, she listened to the bells, the wind, the distant clangor of battle fading into dawn, and within their overlapping cadence, she discovered something like peace. She did not sit. Not yet. Instead, she stood before the throne and turned to face the gaping hall. Through the sundered doors she could see the red light of fires dying in the streets, banners drooping from pikes, the silhouette of a lion on a hanging torn by siege engines. She saw men and women in smallfolk caps scurrying to wells, and knights holding back sellswards from pillage, and one child standing motionless with a wooden sword raised in frozen defiance. All of it framed her at the center of the realm's ruin. Lyanna's voice reached farther than she expected, clear as ice cracking on a pond. "Sir Barristan," she called, knowing the old knight lingered beyond sight. "Lord Commander Whitecloak, come forth." Her words echoed, brushing cobwebs from pillars that had not known a Stark accent since Torin knelt to Aegon. Silence answered at first, then mailed footsteps, measured and certain. Sir Barristan Selmy emerged, helm under one arm, white cloak scorched at the hem. His lined face bore ash streaks, but his blue eyes remained unbowed. He halted at the first step of the throne's dais and bowed, deeper than courtesy alone required. Princess Lyanna. He hesitated, perhaps uncertain what title now suited her. The realm had never named a northern princess. You called. Your oaths are your own, Lyanna said softly. If you mean to avenge your king, take up that sword and try. I will not fault you. She gestured at Dark Sister glinting balefully by Aerys's corpse. But if your oath was to protect the realm, then stand with me. The wildfire caches beneath the city must be quenched at once. Selmy gazed at the fallen king, then at the smoldering windows through which green ghosts of burning wildfire still shimmered. When he lifted his eyes to hers, they were wet. I swore to guard the innocent. I have failed too many. Command me, my lady. Thou. Relief fluttered in Lyanna's chest, brief as the wings of a snow wren, but she mastered it. One sword did not win a throne. Yet Barristan the Bold was no ordinary sword. His honor carried weight even rebels recognized. She inclined her head. Begin with the Alchemist's Guild Hall. Seize the jars. Douse any that burn. I would not see King's Landing reduced to ash because the king desired a pyre worthy of his madness. He saluted, turned, and strode back into the corridor, barking commands that echoed like drumbeats. Lyanna felt the castle shift around her, as if its timbers exhaled after holding breath too long. The mad blaze that could have consumed half the realm might yet be snuffed before midday. But new fires would kindle when word spread that a Stark, worse, a northern girl rumored stolen by Dragon Prince, had struck down the Dragon King and stood beneath the Iron Throne. She heard the distant rasp of steel. Shouts of men forming lines. The host outside the walls could not stay quiet. Robert Baratheon's hammer would pound at the gate soon, even if he had to drag his maesters behind him, stitching his wound anew. Robert. Her thoughts drifted to the boisterous youth who once promised her a castle of flowers in the Stormlands, who boasted of sons dark-haired and fierce to wrestle direwolves in her father's yard. Would he listen when she told him she was not his possession? Not some damsel to rescue, and then lock away as bride trophy? Would any man? The songs seldom granted women the right to slay kings and grasp crowns. They were carved into legends only as temptresses or tragedies. Lyanna Stark intended to be neither. Footsteps rang again, lighter. Swifter. From a side passage edged by statues of long-dead rulers, Ashara Dane emerged in a swirl of torn violet silk, eyes red-rimmed yet blazing. The tall lady of Starfall had tended Lyanna in those strange months in the Tower of Joy, when Rhaegar dreamed of a kingdom remade. Now her grace was frayed, yet her presence anchored the shattered hall. Behind her came Howland Reed, mud-splattered and lean, dragging a wounded Tyrell Levyman, who muttered incoherently about green demons dancing in the dark. They set the soldier gently near a column, binding his forearm with strips torn from Ashara's dress. It struck Lyanna then that alliances had already shifted in ways the realm would not understand for years. A Dane, a Reed, a Stark. Names that once stood on opposite sides of rebellion, clustered now beneath blades, forged in Valyrian's breath. Lady Lyanna, Howland said, dipping his shaggy head. The streets are near secured. Lord Tywin's men entered first. They hold Maegor's Gate. But Baratheon banners fly from the Lion Gate, and Eddard's host nears from the South Road. The city may see 3 armies by dusk. Menetrans. Ashara's voice followed, low, but urgent. And small folk gather in the squares, unsure which sigil will spare them. They speak already of sorcery, of the wolf maid who slew the Dragon King. Lyanna tasted that title on her tongue. Wolf maid. It suited her better than queen or princess. Yet the Iron Throne behind her hissed, metal edges singing of a name far stricter. Usurper! She knelt beside the Tyrell soldier, touching the bandage reed tied. What is your name? She asked quietly. His eyes focused through pain. Sir Marek, of Brightwater. His whisper carried equal parts fear and awe. You fought bravely, Sir Marek. Rest. She rose and faced her two companions. Robert will not wait. Ned will plead calm, but Robert's fury is wildfire of its own. We must meet him before he bursts these gates. Ashara brushed soot from her cheek, leaving a streak of bare skin shining like moonlight on amethyst. Ride out under a white banner? No, Lyanna said. I will ride out wearing none. She strode from the dais, passing Dark Sister without glance, and halted before Arius' corpse. The king's cloak, heavy with gold fringes sewn into red velvet, sprawled across his shoulders like congealed blood. She lifted it, still warm, and draped it over her arm. Then she grasped the crown. It felt heavier than stone, yet its circlet measured no wider than a maiden's head. Eris's skull must have shrunk with fever. The weight came not from gold, but from the expectation of realms. She raised the crown high enough that Ashara and Howland saw it gleam. The realm will claim I stole this, she said, voice steely. Let them be half right. I will not wear it yet. But if I must answer for my crime, it will be before every great lord beneath an open sky. There they can decide whether the line of dragons ends with madness or begins anew in northern snow. Howland nodded solemnly. Ashara stepped nearer, touching Lyanna's forearm. Then we must keep you alive till Dawn's sun sees that council, she murmured. A heavy hush followed. Even the distant bells seemed to pause. And in that hush, Lyanna Stark understood the cost. Every moment henceforth would be gambled against assassination, betrayal, and the creeping shadow of foreign claimants. She had traded a maiden's freedom for a crown she dared not wear yet, could not relinquish without condemning thousands more to war. Life's simple joys, running through Godswood, laughing at Robert's coarse jokes, sparring with Ned on winter mornings, had vanished as surely as the dim moonlight behind the wildfire's green haze. Still, she straightened. Gather what men you trust, she said to Howland. Lord Stark's bannermen will rally to me if Ned stands beside me. We ride to the Lion Gate. We speak with Robert before Tywin seizes the city entire. Ashara, send ravens to every remaining Lord Paramount. Tully, Arryn, Greyjoy, Martell. Tell them the Mad King is dead by my hand and the wildfire doused. Tell them the council will meet at Harrenhal at the Crescent Moon to decide the fate of the crown. Make no promise beyond penance. She paused, weighing the enormity of each name. Make certain they know I do not ask fealty, only their presence. Ashara dipped into a curtsy that looked odd amid rubble. It will be done. Lyanna wrapped the damp cloak of Eris about her own shoulders, its scarlet drenched now with ash. Beneath it, she wore torn gray wool and brigandine stolen from a dead Reach knight. She imagined the sight she would make to Robert. Half wolf, half dragon, neither bride nor sister. Perhaps he would laugh or roar in rage. She would endure either. The world was bursting with men's laughter and rage. What it lacked, and would need if it were to survive the ashes of one mad reign, was resolve. She glanced back once, letting her eyes linger on the Iron Throne. In that moment, the monstrous seat seemed almost alive, breathing faintly, shifting like a creature caught between sleep and waking. Then she turned her back on it and strode toward the broken doors. Clattering hooves and panicked voices rose through courtyards, yet beyond them streaks of peach-colored light speared the smoke, heralding full dawn, a new day, raw and unclaimed. As Lyanna crossed the threshold, the bells began anew, pealing so loudly that every stone underfoot thrummed. The wind off Blackwater Bay shoved the scent of salt and char through the ruined corridors and wrapped it around her like a cloak of its own. She inhaled and stepped into the courtyard where snow would never fall, carrying a crown hidden beneath her arm and a destiny carving frost into the summer air each time she exhaled. Oh, and now, as she yelled, dust still trembled from the ceiling vaults of the Red Keep as Lyanna crossed the courtyard, each footfall drawing whispers from shattered tiles. The long morning stretched before her like a pale pathway, and in its newborn light, she saw every torn banner, every overturned brazier, the twisted limbs of gargoyles cracked from parapets. Smoke curled in thin, reluctant skeins, taking on the color of pearls against the brightening sky. She paused beside a toppled suit of armor half sunk in a puddle of rainwater and soot, staring at her warped reflection in its breastplate. A ragged girl with a crown tucked beneath a scorched cloak stared back, silver glinting through red velvet folds. Even now she wondered whether she carried a promise or a pronouncement of doom. A clatter of hoofbeats snapped her attention toward the inner gate. Sir Barristan had found a fresh destrier, a broad-chested black with a blaze of white on its brow. He rode with a band of maybe 30 mixed swords, half Kingsguard squires, half Stark outriders who had slipped through the streets to answer the call. Some bore hastily whitewashed shields, their old sigils still bleeding color beneath lime and chalk. It was a pitiful escort for one who might soon claim the realm, but every pair of eyes upon her burned with belief, and belief could raise mountains, or bury them. "Litters gather at the Alchemist's Guild Hall," Barristan reported as he dismounted. "Fire is quenched in 3 of the 7 vaults. The rest should cool by sundown, if the gods grant us fortune." "We forge fortune," Lyanna answered, swinging into the saddle Ashara held for her. "And today we must forge it faster than Tywin's quills scratch parchment." She nudged her mount forward, feeling the rough leather stick where wildfire heat had warped the stitching. Ashara and Howland mounted behind her, Dagos, an old Stark retainer, falling into place with the wolf banner limp on its staff. The procession moved through the ruined yard, past archways where dragon gargoyles gaped toothless. At every corner small folk crouched behind broken carts or under cracked fountains, flinching as if each hoofclap might herald new flames. Lyanna slowed, letting the refugees glimpse her face. Somewhere among them someone spoke her name, first a tentative Lady Stark, then louder. The Wolf Girl. They did not yet know what she had done, but news in King's Landing flew on the wind, and soon whispers would grow into storms. They reached the mud-slick path descending to the Lion Gate. The great oak doors hung ajar, one leaf entirely torn away by a ram that lay splintered in the ditch below. Fresh Baratheon banners flapped above the breach, gold stag rampant against a field of black. But lions stood watch as well, red and gold armor gleaming. Lannister pikemen manned the walls, while Baratheon men slogged through the courtyard beyond, relieving wounded, stacking pikes, binding prisoners. Tywin Lannister himself waited where the gate's shadow met sun, his polished gorget reflecting the first rays so fiercely it hurt the eyes. A half-circle of crimson cloaks framed him, swords sheathed but gauntlets resting on hilts. His features, carved of marble and disdain, studied Lyanna's small party with the cold precision of a ledger keeper. She halted at spear length. Neither woman nor steel bowed first. A hush spread. Even chain link seemed to still. Tywin broke it, voice as hard as the stones underfoot. "You ride behind a dragon's banner, Lady Stark." His gaze flicked to the bundled cloak on her arm. "Yet you wear a dragon's cloak." The barest breath of condescension ghosted the corners of his mouth. Has the rebellion ended, or does it merely change colors? Howland Reed stirred, but Lyanna raised gloved fingers for silence. "The Mad King is dead," she said, letting each word fall crisp as frost. "King's Landing is spared wildfire because of it. I seek no quarrel with House Lannister so long as its swords keep order, not pillage." "Then, son." One tawny eyebrow arched, almost amused. "Pillage? My dear girl, I arrived to find your northern wolves sacking the city while the dragon still breathed. It was my men who closed the gates to prevent worse." A low growl rumbled from Dagos, cut short by Barristan's steely glance. Lyanna felt heat crawl her neck but tamped it down. "If the city stands tomorrow, it will owe each of us a debt, and each of us will claim credit enough. But first, we must avert more slaughter." She lifted the bundled cloak, letting the red velvet spill enough to reveal the dragon crown's gleam. Gasps darted through the Baratheon ranks. I will meet Lord Robert at this gate. You may stand with me or stand aside." Silence solidified. Tywin's cool green eyes fixed on the circlet. He seemed to weigh every facet: gold content, gem count, the number of swords a crown could buy. Then, with a gesture delicate as a painter placing a final stroke, he stepped aside. "I stand," he said, "exactly where I have always stood, with the realm. Let Lord Robert come." Now. Horn blasts sounded beyond the curtain walls, a triple note of arrival. Through the gates charred maw rode a force in tattered storm banners. At its head thundered a great dapple-gray destrier, bearing Robert Baratheon. His helm, an antlered crown of beaten steel, was shoved back, revealing hair matted dark with sweat and blood. His hammer, still crusted ruby with Rhaegar's death, rested across the saddle bow. He looked like a storm given shape. Eyes tempest blue, beard bristling, chest heaving with battle eagerness that had no more battles left to fight. He reined to a halt just beyond spear reach, nostrils flaring as he took in the tableau. Tywin's rigid courtesy, Lannister spears poised, Lyanna seated in soot-stained leather behind a wolf standard. It took 3 heartbeats before recognition narrowed his eyes. Then disbelief shattered across his face. Lyanna. His roar cracked like thunder. He all but hurled himself from the saddle, armor clanging, boots skidding in the mud. "Gods, they told me you were..." Words failed. His gauntlets caught her forearms as though she might vanish in smoke. His gaze swept her, hungrily searching for wounds. "By the 7, I thought Rhaegar. Did he hurt you?" "He tried to save me," Lyanna said. Her voice, brittle but firm, cut through the gathering hush. Others meant harm, but none succeeded. She did not yield to his embrace. The memory of Rhaegar's gentle, puzzled eyes rose unbidden, and with it, a pang of mourning. "Robert, we have little time. The Mad King is dead by my hand. The wildfire caches burn out, yet half the city totters. We must keep peace." Robert's jaw worked. He looked from her soiled cloak to the hidden crown, then past her to Barristan, to Tywin, as a man waking to find the storms have marched while he slept. "Mad King's dead." He spat onto the flagstones. "Good. I'd have done it twice. But by your hand?" His voice softened to confusion. "Sweetling, you need never sully." "I needed to, Robert." She withdrew from his grip, letting his gauntlets fall. "Else we would stand in green fire, not sunlight." She nodded at Tywin, then at the trembling smallfolk clusters peering through arrow slits. "You are their deliverer. Act like it. Command your men. No loot, no rape, no vengeance. We treat this city as I treated that king. Swiftly, and with purpose." "Memswine." Robert blinked. Chastened. But anger, pride, love warred on his broad brow. At last he flung his hammer to a squire. "Hear her," he bellowed to his knights. "No man breaks ranks, no man lifts purse, nor skirt, nor torch. Any who do answers to the Stormland's justice." He turned back, hands searching for hers. "Now, my wolf, come with me. We'll marry this very day, in the sept, crown you queen." "Queen?" Tywin interjected. "Smooth as catgut." "Interesting. A Baratheon crown sits on no woman's head, least of all a Stark's." "Bem?" Robert rounded, thunder again. "Sir, you dispute me now?" "I dispute haste." Tywin's voice never rose. "A crown forged in rush cracks in drought. The realm has bled. It deserves more than a wedding feast as balm. We must convene the lords, set order." Lyanna lifted the crown fully into view. Sunlight carved fire from each scaled ridge. "This belongs to none of us yet," she announced. "Not until we gather at Harrenhal on the crescent moon. There, every great house shall voice its claim. Baratheon by conquest, Stark by right of slaying the tyrant, Lannister by stewardship of the city, Tully and Arryn in blood alliance, Martell by vengeance, Greyjoy by salt. Let the realm decide, or at least watch while we do." "Menabwamus." Robert's shoulders sagged as if that hammer still weighed him. "A council of lords rung round that cursed castle," he muttered. "We fought 3 years to sit a man in the Red Keep, not to chatter in its burned sister. How many more years will you fight if you cannot keep these lords talking?" Lyanna countered, eyes locked on his. "Look beyond the day's glory. Rhaegar's heir may live across the sea. The Reach bleeds, the riverlands starve. Dorne thirsts for vengeance. You wish to ride out again? Or would you rather rule?" He exhaled, and the storm eased fractionally. "I wish only to hold you, to see the north smile again." His knuckles brushed her cheek, leaving a smear of ash. "But I'll hear your counsel, as I always should have." Howland nudged his horse forward. "Then we'd best tend the city, send ravens, prepare stores for foreigners and armies alike. The small folk will watch what we do now, not what banners we hang later." Robert nodded. "Very well. Tywin, bar your lions from excess. Anyone bearing crimson caught stealing loses a hand, and I'll take it myself." Tywin inclined his head as though carving the decree into air. "My men will comply. See that yours do likewise. Bender Rowland see." Lyanna felt the tension slacken, though only slightly, like silk ropes that might fray anew with any wind. She swung from her saddle and pressed the crown into Robert's thick hands. Its polished teeth glittered against his gauntlet. "Keep it safe," she murmured, "until we all stand beneath the walls of Harrenhal. I will not hold it again until then." Robert looked at the circlet, stunned by its weight or its symbolism, then slipped it into a velvet sack a squire offered. "It shall remain unopened until that day," he swore. A distant cry erupted, thin and frantic. From the east, smoke climbed anew, thick coils spiraling beyond the Sep's bell tower. Lyanna smelled burning wool, heard horns from Tyrell outriders. A riot, perhaps, or remnants of wildfire newly discovered. She swung back into her saddle. "Barristan, with me. Howland, take 20 and secure the granaries. Ashara, go to the maesters. Spread word that plague must not follow war. Robert," she met his gaze, "hold the streets. Make the small folk believe in you." She kicked her horse into motion before he could protest, cloak billowing like crimson smoke. Barristan kept pace, visor lowered, white book honor shining despite ash stains. They galloped through narrow ways where blackened corpses of market stalls still smoked, scattering dogs and rag pickers. At the foot of Visenya's hill, a crowd jammed the steps of a weaver's hall, yelling while a handful of sellswords brandished torches at shuttered windows. The stink of fear rose thicker than smoke. Lyanna drew Castle's Frost, its pale steel whispering from scabbard. Barristan's voice boomed. "In the name of the king's peace." The sellswords froze. Seeing the white cloak, seeing the grim resolve in the wolf maiden's stare, Lyanna wheeled her horse between torches and doorway. "Lower those flames," she commanded, "else I douse them in your blood." She pointed to the cowering family within, the weaver, his wife, their child clutching a spindle like a sword. "They are subjects, not spoils." One sellsword spat, backing away. Another scowled at Barristan's drawn blade and chose profitless life over coin. They scattered, dropping torches which Barristan stamped out. Lyanna dismounted, pushing open the door. The family knelt in terror, until she knelt as well, eye to eye with the child. "Your craft will be needed," she promised softly. "The city mends. Weavers' hands will dress emperors before long, if they endure today. Stay indoors until the bells ring thrice together." She left them a silver stag, then remounted. As they rode on, Barristan gave her a curious look above his shield rim. Few queens carry coin amidst battle. "I am no queen," she said. "Yet." She loosened the cloak's clasp, red velvet heavy with sweat. The weight of Eris's mantle nettled her skin. She tugged it free, folding it across the saddle horn. "Perhaps I never shall be, but I am my brother's sister, and Ned reminds me often that a lord without mercy is naught but a butcher." They reached the bailey of the dragon pit by late afternoon, chem-like sunlight filtering through the dragon skulls, gaping maws. Refugees packed the ruin. Dozens of mothers swaddling infants under ribs of extinct monsters, old men propped against pillars, eyes vacant. A line for bread meandered like an ant trail to an overturned wagon, where stark levies distributed strips of hardtack and skinfuls of watered wine. The sight hollowed something within Lyanna. War's pageants of banners and bright helms felt a child's pageantry compared with these silent, hollow faces. She dismounted, instructing Barristan to keep watch. Moving among the weary, she saw wounds crudely bandaged with curtain cloth, burned feet wrapped in straw, babes too weak even to cry. She knelt beside a girl no older than 10 whose left arm ended in a charred stump. The child's eyes, wide and stunned, had seen horrors the bards could not voice. Lyanna removed a wolf-headed brooch from her collar, cool silver etched with garnet eyes. She placed it in the girl's good hand. "Keep this," she whispered. "When the snows melt and you walk again, come north. Show this at Winterfell's gate. Tell them Lyanna sent you." The girl nodded once, as though afraid to believe. A sob choked in Lyanna's throat. She stood quickly. Overhead, crows circled on smoky thermals, their cries harsh as rusted hinges. Somewhere a mother wailed a name that found no answer. Barristan approached, helm under arm. "You bite off my own heart, my lady," he said quietly. "Yet if a queen must be forged, better heart than ice." "Better both," Lyanna replied. Her gaze drifted east, where the red keep thrust against the sky like a broken fang. Ice enough to hold the realm, heart enough to heal it. Twilight threatened before they returned to the strong door. Fires glowed in braziers along the main thoroughfare, soldiers standing at each with halberds reversed in pledge of peace. Robert's order had held, for now. Vendors even dared to roast onions over braziers, scent mingling with smoke, proof that life clawed at ruin to reclaim space. At the gate yard, Ned Stark awaited, cloak flapping in a rising wind off the bay. The sight rooted Lyanna's breath. He looked older than memory, caked in dust, eyes undershot with red. But his smile, tentative and aching, carried Winterfell's hearth with it. She dismounted into his arms, allowing herself at last that fragile harbor. For one instant, she was only Lyanna, little sister, troublemaker, not the girl who slew a king. When they parted, he brushed her hair, finding strands of ash. "I feared the worst," he murmured. "Then I heard rumor you led Kingsguard through the streets like hounds. I knew only my sister could summon such madness." She laughed, hoarse but genuine. "Madness may save us yet." She drew him aside where lantern light painted their shadows long. "We must speak plainly. At Harrenhal you must stand for me, Ned, for the North, and for the realm that should be. Robert's love is loud but not steadfast. Tywin's counsel is steady but cold. Yours is the voice they will trust when the council fractures." "Ben-Nari." He regarded her, pain and pride mingling. "Are you certain of this path? There will be letters calling you usurper, abomination, dragon witch. There may be daggers in dark halls. I was certain when I drove steel through a tyrant's heart." Her hand closed around air where Dark Sister had been. She felt its ghost tremble. "I cannot undo that stroke, nor would I. Better to face daylight than hide in crypts." Ned exhaled, snow on breath despite the warm night. "Then I stand beside you. The North will follow, even though slow to accept a woman's rule. You are wolf-born. They will remember." "Mesh." Footsteps interrupted. Ashara Dane glided from the shadows, raven feather cloak clasped by a falling star. "Raven sent," she reported. Tully and Aaron respond favorably. Stannis Baratheon rides behind his brother, suspicious of Tywin. Dorne is silent. Her violet gaze lingered on Lyanna's face. Elias Blood cries out, and Doran Martell listens to blood before reason. Lyanna's stomach clenched. Then reason must reach Dorne swiftly. Perhaps Ashara Starfall can deliver it. You know their courts, their hearts. Bendawand. Ashara inclined her head. "I will leave at dawn with a small guard. My name may protect me enough to argue yours." She touched Lyanna's hand. "Yet, if I do not return, remember I chose this road." Ned cleared his throat. "No road is walked alone. I'll send Northmen with her, men sworn to my lady's cause." Lyanna clasped both their hands. "I could ask for no truer banners than the ones you carry invisible on your souls." She gestured to the yard where tents bloomed. Healers carried stretcher after stretcher. Smiths hammered dented helms, straight to rehoop them for fresh guard duty. The realm births itself anew tonight, and no midwife may rest. She parted from them, climbing the stone steps to the rampart walk. Wind tore at her braids, bringing the tang of tide and charred cedar. Below, King's Landing glittered with campfires, each a tiny sun in the ruin. She remembered standing on Winterfell's wall watching first snow blanket fields, white and innocent. Here she watched cinder flakes drift, glowing and fading before touching earth. Reverse snowfall in a summer land. A raven settled on the parapet beside her, feathers ragged, eyes black as moonless water. It croaked once, as though offended that black fire still smoldered in the streets. Lyanna stroked its wing. "Tell your gods," she whispered, "their game pieces rebel." The bird tilted its head, then leapt, wings beating a slow, deliberate rhythm northward into night. Below, the bells chimed the hour. Their peal no longer mourned or warned. It announced, to anyone still listening, that the old day was dead, and something uncharted had edged into its place. Lyanna Stark watched the horizon until the bells ceased, and only the hush of wind remained. Somewhere beyond darkness, Harrenhal waited. Broken, sprawling, full of ghosts. Yet for the first time she felt a pull not of dread, but of possibility. Stone could crumble, blood could dry, names could tarnish. But a will sharpened by snow and steel could carve dawn from the bones of dragons. She turned from the parapet, cloak snapping like a banner behind her. Down in the courtyard, men called for water, for bandages, for order. She descended, her boots loud on the steps, each stride echoing like a heartbeat. There were councils to summon, alliances to weave, scavengers to frighten, children to feed, dreams to bury, a realm to build brick by blistered brick. She felt the crown's absence like a phantom limb, and welcomed the emptiness. For until the lords met beneath the smoking towers of Harrenhal, her head would know no weight but the skies. Night deepened. Fires crackled. Somewhere a harp began to play, soft and tentative, stumbling into verse. The tune caught on the breeze and floated upward to where Lyanna crossed the flagstones. And in it she heard the ghost of Rhaegar's fingers plucking strings by a pool in Dorne, singing of the prince that was promised. The song faltered, then steadied, weaving new chords atop old. Lyanna's steps matched its cadence as she vanished into the lantern glow. The Mad King was dead, the Wolf Maid walked, and the Iron Throne was empty. Dawn would tell the rest, if Dawn dared. Aye. Ha. The wind shifted sometime after the third hour of the Wolf's Watch, bringing with it the chill promise of sunrise and the ripe stench of the Blackwater's tidal flats at ebb. Lyanna felt both in equal measure. She had yet to close her eyes, though a full day had bled away since she left the throne room, dark with wildfire smoke. The corridors of the Red Keep, stripped of tapestries to serve the wounded, echoed with ceaseless stir and hush. A groan here, the scrape of a bucket there. Whispers about new laws, uttered under cover of torchlight. Sleep could not settle in such halls, and so she wandered them like a shade. She paused outside the small hall, where Ned had convened an ad hoc council 2 hours past midnight. Through the cracked door she caught the low murmur of strategy. Howland's river-soft voice describing food stores. Stannis Baratheon's iron rasp counting ships that still rode at anchor. Maester Pycelle's ponderous drone recommending grain levies from the Reach. They argued in respectful half-tones, like kinsmen gathered round a frail elder who must not be startled to wait. That elder, of course, was the realm itself. Wheezing, feverish, fragile, and no longer ruled by dragons. Lyanna moved on before they noticed her, letting the door ease shut. For now, she trusted Ned to mediate between hot temper and cold policy. Instead, she descended the servant's stair toward the old Scorpion Tower on the eastern curtain, where rumor claimed Varys the Spider tended a growing web of informers. The Master of Whisperers had eluded her since dusk. She would not let dawn break before she measured his loyalties. Torches guttered as she passed, shadows slipping over the stone like spilled ink. Once, in Winterfell's crypts, she had frightened Benjen with ghost stories of kings rising to reclaim their swords. Here, phantoms wore living flesh, lords and spies and sellswords, each eager to carve their piece of tomorrow. Somewhere in the keep's warren, Tywin Lannister burned midnight oil drafting ledgers of recompense. Elsewhere, Robert Baratheon drank himself toward oblivion, singing ribald lays about the Wolf Queen yet uncrowned. Across the sea, a silver-haired boy likely woke from a fever dream, in which he alone carried his dynasty's last flickering ember. She felt them all, tugging at her like unseen tides. 2 gold cloaks barred the Scorpion Tower stair. They lowered halberds until recognition sparked. One stepped aside, the other dabbed sweat from his brow and muttered a blessing. Inside, torches hissed against damp, and the air smelled of dust and parchment. Varys stood at a narrow window slit, robes the shade of bruised lilac, head gleaming in the flame glow. He turned smoothly, hands clasped as though greeting a patron in a perfumed salon, not a steel-ribbed tower that once housed siege engines. "My Lady Stark," he cooed, bowing. "Or do the whispers call you something grander already?" "Let them whisper," she replied, drawing nearer. "I prefer plain words. Tell me whose side you serve tonight." Varys smiled, eyes soft as unshed tears. "Why, the realms as ever. And the realms needs change with the tide. Thus I must keep a great many boats afloat." "Lyanna." "Boats capsize in storms. Choose poorly, and you'll drown." The eunuch inclined his head, conceding the truth. "Storms, yes. Lord Robert is a storm given man's form. Lord Tywin is the reef against which storms may smash. And you, my lady, are the current beneath, invisible yet irresistibly directing all. I am a woman who wants children fed and streets quiet by dawn." She lifted her chin. "Can you help me?" His gaze sharpened. "If you permit my little birds to resume their flights." Half the messengers slain in the sack wore no sigil, only my secrets. Fear drives soldiers to rash acts. "Then so. The sack is ended," she said. "No more killings of unarmed folk. Send your birds, but their songs reach me as well as Robert." A smile feathered his lips. "You shall have daily scrolls, ink still wet. Then begin now." She glanced toward the shadowed stairwell. "What plots brew this very hour?" Varys folded his hands. "An ambitious sell sail from Marseek's contract to ferry a boy and his newborn sister eastward from Dragonstone. If he can slip Lord Stannis' blockade, which is doubtful. In Flea Bottom, 2 minor houses of the Crownland's armed household guards, wagering Lord Tywin, will support their petitions for new holdings. And in the Red Keep itself, a Tyrell cousin offers gold to any healer who can spirit him south before the council asks inconvenient questions." "Men?" Lyanna absorbed each piece. "The Targaryen boy, Viserys. If he escapes, war may return years hence." "True." Varys met her gaze unflinchingly. "Yet slaughtering an infant princess beside him would stain whatever throne you finally claim. Some stains never fade, no matter how bright the crown." "Nah." She thought of the baby rumors. Elias' daughter dashed against a wall. The prince pierced through, all done while she fought above wildfire vaults. Her stomach coiled. "We will capture, not kill," she said. "No more children's blood." "Then the cell sail must fail," Varys murmured. "I shall arrange complications." "Do so," she said, "but quietly. And if harm comes to the babe, I will hold you accountable. My lady wounds me. I cherish all young things." His smile faded, replaced by something bleak. "Once, I was one." Lyanna turned away, unsettled by candor, and ascended into the night. Behind her, Varys' whisper followed. "The bells ring thrice at sunrise, my lady. The city will expect a proclamation." She paused, hand on the stair rail. "Let them expect." Then she continued upward, hearing his soft laughter echo. Dawn tinted the bay rose and gold. When the bells chimed, their beat rolled over rooftops and out across the marshy mouths of the Blackwater, like a drum summoning armies of daylight. Lyanna stood atop the King's Gate barbican flanked by Barristan and Ned. Below, a hush rippled through the throngs packed along the street of steel. Smiths smeared with soot, bakers holding day-old loaves in trade for news, washerwomen balancing chipped ewers on hips. Lannister guards in bright crimson kept ranks with Baratheon halberdiers. Both sides cast wary glances, but held discipline. She stepped to the wall's edge, letting the wind stir her hair free of its leather tie. No crown shone upon her brow. Only a plain gray cloak, trimmed in white fur Ned's quartermaster had found among discarded reach silks, draped her shoulders. She lifted her voice, letting northern crispness carry the words. "People of King's Landing, I am Lyanna Stark of Winterfell. Yesterday I slew Aerys Targaryen in defense of every life within these walls. His wildfire lies quenched. His war is done." A low stir ran the length of the avenue. A sigh of astonishment mixed with dread. "I claim no right to rule you by sword alone. Therefore, the great lords shall gather at Harrenhal on the crescent moon to choose the realm's path. Until then, Lord Robert Baratheon and Lord Eddard Stark share stewardship of this city, with Sir Barristan Selmy commanding the city watch and Lord Tywin Lannister provisioning the granaries. Any man who steals, riots, or harms the innocent will face swift justice, regardless of his sigil." They. Her gaze swept the crowd. Scared, hungry, uncertain. Tonight the gates will open for trade. Bakeries will receive free grain. Children orphaned by the war may seek sanctuary in the Sept of Baelor, the Dragon Pit, or any temple of the Seven. My household knights will guard their beds. Dantro. In the front ranks a one-armed veteran lifted a dented helm and shouted, "Long live the Wolf Maiden!" Others took up the cry. Some hailed Robert. A few cursed dragons passed in future. But the swelling chorus drowned dissent, and for the first time since the walls were breached, hope flickered across smoke-blackened faces. Ned touched her elbow gently. "Well spoken." She let out a slow breath, realizing her hands trembled now that the shouting rose. "Words buy us hours," she whispered. "We must spend them well." The hours became days. In the great kitchens, Keelia Waters, a bastard tavern girl newly appointed quartermistress by Ned, oversaw vats of thick barley stew seasoned with hard-won vegetables from surviving gardens outside the walls. She proved ruthless as any general, cuffing thieving hands, drafting orphan lads into dish lines, negotiating fuel shares with blacksmiths in exchange for repairing cauldrons. Within 2 days, the city smelled more of onions and pepper than of smoke. In the Street of Sisters, Maester Coleman of Gulltown established plague watches, distributing cloth dipped in wine to washerwomen tasked with scrubbing alleyways where bloated corpses had lain. Ashara Dane, still in the city while arranging passage to Sunspear, walked the lanes with him, her noble presence shaming petty nobles into funding hospice tents atop Aegon's Hill. At night, Lyanna met with small merchant guilds beneath the broken vault of the Crown Tavern, persuading them to extend credit until grain barges resumed up the Blackwater. Heralds announced fixed bread prices at dawn. Anyone who exceeded them lost teeth, or worse, before dusk. Fear walked with hope, and for the moment it kept peace. Robert spent his days touring the wards, jesting with guards, gifting silver stags, and making grand promises. A new sept to honor the Seven and Lyanna both. Tourneys every harvest, arrears forgiven. In the evenings he returned to Maegor's Holdfast, flushed with cider and fatigue, eager to press wedding plans. Lyanna deflected with tasks. "Tomorrow we ride to inspect the wildfire vaults. After that, we must negotiate with the Faith." "Soon, Robert." "But not yet." He grumbled, but complied. Charmed anew by her steel, Tywin sent swift riders west to summon Cersei and her brothers. Rumor whispered he meant to wed Cersei to Robert if Lyanna faltered. Ned countered by drafting a letter inviting Jon Arryn's foster son Renly to serve as page under Lyanna's tutelage. Political dances unfolded, like the game boards Lyanna and Benjen once carved in Winterfell's library. Subtle shifts, strategic feints, alliances etched in wax, and dispatched by Raven. By the fifth sunrise, ravens returned. Some with replies, others without. Lord Hoster, Tully wrote in tremulous script that he welcomed counsel at Harrenhal, and would ride once his gout permitted. John Arryn promised presence, counsel and caution against hasty coronations. Balon Greyjoy's parchment smelled of sea salt and disdain. The Iron Islands would send observers, no more. From Sunspear came only silence, heavy as noon heat in the water gardens. In the Godswood of the Red Keep, Lyanna sought quiet. The southern weirwood stood smaller than Winterfell's ancient heart tree, yet its red leaves fluttered with the same papery sigh. She knelt, pressing fingers to damp earth. Images spilled across her mind. Brandon smiling. Father's proud eyes. Benjen racing wind swift up a tower stair. She asked the old gods nothing. They had already given more than they ever promised. But she breathed their stillness, letting it thread through her blood like slow river water. Footsteps approached. She did not turn. Ned's presence felt like home. Her brother sat beside her cross-legged. They watched crimson leaves drift. "You walk as if stones load your boots," he said. "I fear dropping them. If I stumble, one may crack open, spill more war." He nodded. "Such weight cannot be borne alone." "Let me share it." She offered a half-smile. "You already carry half the realm upon those narrow shoulders. And you carry the other half," he countered. "Best we prop each other." A hush stretched between them, broken by gull cries far below. Ned hesitated, then produced a folded parchment. This arrived from Riverrun. "Hoster's Maester writes in cipher I recall from my fostering days." She took it, smoothing the fold. Inside, neat symbols formed a hidden message. Quietly, the river hears southern sands hissing. "Martell blades hone for wolf's throat. Guard your night hearts." Lyanna exhaled. "Dorn plots vengeance. Ashara must hurry." "She sails at dawn," Ned said. "With 5 of my best and the Dane sword Dawn itself in her keeping." Lyanna closed her eyes. "Pray they see her as envoy, not traitor. The gods owe us kindness." Ned attempted a wry tone, failed. "Though they seldom pay debts." The gods sent no sign, but something else came 2 nights later. Moonless darkness cloaked the Red Keep's gardens. Lyanna stood on a gallery balcony above the cliff face walk, reviewing Varys' newest scroll by lantern glow. Footsteps scuffed stone behind her. Too light for guard, too soft for servant. She spun as a blade hissed from cloth. The assassin wore black sand silk, face masked, eyes reflecting lantern flame like candlelit wine. A curved dagger arced for her throat. She caught the attacker's wrist with both hands, leveraging a twist she'd learned wrestling Ned in Winterfell's yard. The dagger scraped her collarbone, nicking flesh. Pain flared. Warm blood trickled. From shadows leapt Greywind, the direwolf pup, gifted weeks earlier by a grateful northern retainer. Though now, the pup reached a boar's shoulder. His jaws closed on the assassin's calf with bone-snapping crunch. A cry burst, cut short as Barristan's mailed fist struck the assailant's temple. The dagger clattered, black-cloaked figure collapsed, Greywind snarling over him. Barristan had followed Lyanna's unannounced stroll, trusting no corridor tonight. He kicked the blade away, then yanked back the mask. Soft features, high cheekbones, a sun-kissed complexion. Not Dornish. Summer Isles perhaps, or lies. A girl no older than 5 and 10. Blood foamed at her lips. "Poison," Barristan muttered. Bit her own tooth. Lyanna knelt, ignoring pain in her shoulder. "Why did you try to kill me?" The girl's gaze flicked to the direwolf, then to the sea cliff beyond. Her lips moved, a whisper like wind through reeds. "Dragon. For Dornish. Death." Then her eyes glazed. Barristan straightened, fury boiling beneath cool knighthood. "An agent of Sunspear? Or one who wants us to think so?" Lyanna answered. She stroked Greywind's ruff, calming his growl. "See, she's buried gently. No banners on the bier. I will not parade corpses." He bowed. Word of the attempt swept the keep before dawn, though Lyanna publicly dismissed it as a lone fanatic. Privately, security doubled. Varys claimed surprise. promising to pluck the responsible spider from his web. Tywin seized the chance to warn of northern naivete and offered Lannister guards. Lyanna declined, placing her safety in Stark men and the King's Guard. Robert raged, hunted halls with Warhammer, vowing to execute 10 Dornish prisoners for every drop of her blood spilled. She cooled him with an icy stare until he threw the hammer against a wall and stalked out muttering. In the quiet that followed, she allowed Maester Pycelle to salve the wound. He fussed and clucked, asserting permanent scarring. She shrugged. A scar might remind courtiers she was made not of snow but bone. 7 days after the assassination attempt, a Sharas raven arrived from Storm's End. She had diverted there to resupply. En route, her ship outran 3 Dromans under the banner of House Hightower. She suspected spies. Still, weather favored her arrival at Sunspear within a fortnight. She carried Ned's personal letter to Prince Doran. Lyanna penned her own reply, entrusting a swift gull-winged raven. "Dawn rides with you. Let it herald morning, not blood." She sealed it with gray wax and pressed a signet newly forged by the city's best smith. A direwolf crowned with a circlet of winter roses. Meanwhile, ships bearing grain from Gulltown and Wickenden eased into the harbor under escort by Stannis galleys. Food riots abated. Merchants reopened stalls. Minstrels composed songs, some praising Robert the Liberator, others exalting the Wolf Queen. She forbade censers. Songs, like rivers, found ways around stones. She walked the city each twilight, sometimes disguised in rough cloak, sometimes visible atop Windprod, Robert's borrowed palfrey, listening, always listening. She heard more gratitude than venom, yet suspicion lingered. In taverns, men argued whether a woman might command armies if war flared anew. She considered such talk a gift. While they debated, she trained daily at dawn with Barristan, honing swordcraft until sweat-soaked tunic and new scar burned. She refused armor that pinched the collar. Instead, she had a cuirass tailored to allow the wound to breathe. Blackened steel etched with pale direwolf across the sternum. When she first donned it, Robert gaped like a drunk before a miracle. Then, to her irritation, he insisted on matching plate embossed with welded roses. They compromised on plain brigandine for his chest beneath the bull sigil. On the 14th day, ravens from the Eyrie bore ill tidings. Jon Arryn's vestibular infection worsened. Ascent to Harrenhal by horseback might kill him. Instead, he proposed hosting the council in the Vale. Tywin objected instantly. Few armies could pass the Bloody Gate, and he would not sit beneath Arryn eagles. Robert balked at further delay. Greyjoy demanded a neutral site by sea. The realm threatened to splinter over geography before matters of crown even breached. Lyanna called a night council in what remained of the throne room. Broken stained glass shards still caught candlelight like tears. She listened to Stannis enumerate supply lines, to Renly laugh off danger, to Tywin's cold recitation of precedents. When they stopped, she stood from the scorched steps of the dais. "Harrenhal stands," she said. "Its halls can host every lord and twice their fear. It is ruin, aye, but neutral ruin. If Lord Arryn cannot ride, we bring him by litter on a swan barge upriver. I will escort him myself." "And no." Robert opened his mouth to object, saw Ned's steady gaze, and closed it. Tywin inclined his head, defeat turning corners of his mouth. "As you will, Lady Stark." She swept the council with wolf-gray eyes. "We depart in 3 weeks. Lords may bring a company of 500 armsmen, no more. Any who exceed that will find their banners denied entrance. Spread word, there will be no red draw of lines by force. The next war will start over that Blackwater Ridge outside, not inside Harrenhal's walls." Silence answered, but beneath it, she sensed grudging respect. Afterward, alone with Ned, she confessed trembling. "Each decree feels like walking on a pond before the ice truly thickens." He squeezed her shoulder. "You test every stride. That keeps you alive." As preparations grew, So did threats. One evening, a pyre ignited on Cobbler's Square. Wildfire jar buried beneath cobbles by the alchemists for Eris's final madness, overlooked in the first purge. Flames climbed Emerald 30 feet high, devouring a warehouse of sheepskins. Lyanna raced there astride Greywind, Barristan at her flank. 2 alchemists flung sand barrels, but the fire only hissed. Her direwolf howled, panicked. She ordered the square evacuated, then helped man a bucket line from a nearby cistern until dawn. Only when charred walls sagged inward did the green tongues fade. Blackened and smoke-blind, she collapsed on the cistern rim. A ragged septon knelt to offer water. "Queen of Ash," he murmured, eyes shining with awe. She pushed away the title, but accepted the gourd. Next day, she commandeered Tywin's scribes to map every rumored wildfire cache. Stannis sailors flooded vaults with bay water, heedless of alchemical protests. 4 men died when a plug cracked and gas burst aflame. She stood at their funeral pyres on the beach, swearing no more lives would feed dragonfire. The pyre's smoke drifted out to sea, a warning to viceroys and any who dreamt the city still theirs. Letters from the north arrived with the first hints of leaf fall. Karstarks pledged men and coin. Manderleys offered ships to ferry grain. Lady Barbary Dustin wrote acidly that Stark should mind the north before gallivanting as dragonlords. Lyanna penned replies by moonlight, soothing, stern, and sometimes sly. She promised Lady Dustin new trade routes through White Harbor if Northern unity held. One night, as she sealed a particularly delicate missive to Lord Greyjoy, Robert entered bearing 2 goblets. "Wine from Arbor," he declared. "If the Tyrells can't attend without sharpened roses, let them at least share harvest." She took the goblet, tasted honeysuckle and oak. He perched beside her desk, watching candle shimmers dance across her features. "We've come far, my wolf," he said softly. "From that day at Harrenhal when you wore blue, and I vowed kingdoms for your smile." Her quill stilled. "Kingdoms cost blood." "I know." He touched her scar lightly. "I will wait for your counsel, for the Lord's decisions, for everything. But hear me. I loved you before crowns, before war. That endures." She studied his face. Fatigue etching lines deeper than years warranted, eyes ringed dark with worry, yet within them burned loyalty fierce as any direwolf howl. She set her goblet down. "I cannot promise more than tomorrow. Tomorrow will do." He leaned forward, brushed her forehead with lips gentle despite battle-calloused hands. Then he left, humming an off-key lullaby. Lyanna watched the door long after it closed. Heart tangled like ivy on castle stone. She welcomed its ache. Better hearts that feel than one's hardened past recognition. The day of departure crested on wings of migrating geese, their cries haunting against a pearl sky. Columns formed along the Roserwad. Stark gray, Baratheon black and gold. Arryn blue banners, scattered reach levies, and a knot of crimson and gold where Jaime Lannister rode beside his father, white cloak billowing. Tywin traveled, as observer. Yet his force numbered nearly 500, the limit, but every man glittered with scale and bright spear points. Lyanna led the van, Greywind pacing beside Ironhoof. The destrier Barristan gifted her. Ned rode at her right, Robert at her left, Stannis flanking. Behind followed wagons of grain and healing sisters. Trades, cooks, cages of ravens. Above flew a single banner newly sewn. Direwolf rampant argent on field of frost. A winter rose clenched in its jaws. City gates closed behind them with hollow boom, as if the Red Keep exhaled relief. Farmers lining the road bowed or stared. Some knelt in mud die. One old woman pressed a budding rose into Lyanna's gauntlet. She tucked it into her cloak clasp, watched its petals bruise against steel. Their pace was steady. Scouts swept woods. Nights they camped in ringed circles, torches blazing. Every third tent a healer's pavilion. Fireside councils plotted seating charts, precedence protocols, hostage exchanges should tempers erupt. Lyanna learned to weigh voices. Renly's charm masking ambition, Stannis' blunt truth welded to personal pride. Barristan's honor echoing like cathedral bells above every debate. Tywin's silences heavier than spoken words. On the 12th day, thunderheads massed westward. Rain began as they reached the ford where the Blue Fork met the Tumblestone. Mud sucked at wheels. Commanders bickered. Fish still rotted from last month's battle upstream. Lyanna ordered halt, oversaw raft bridges, waded waist-deep to tug stuck wagons free. Armor dragging her down. Robert cursed until he joined, boots sloshing. By dusk, they set camp on higher ground, rain easing. That night, lightning rippled beyond the horizon, limning Harrenhal's black towers in ghostly flashes. Many fell silent before the sight. Morning unveiled the ruin in earnest. 5 gargantuan towers melted by dragonfire centuries past, jagged like broken fangs. Curtain walls buckled inward, courtyards choked with weeds. Yet vast halls remained intact, barns enough to stable every horse. Small folk in nearby villages had scavenged stone for generations. They peered from hedges in awe as banners snaked through the breach. Lyanna rode beneath the massive gatehouse arch, Firestorm Tower's stump looming above, feeling history press down. Here Aegon's might dimmed Harren the Black's hubris. Here Rhaegar's tourney crowned her queen of love and beauty. Here now the realm would weigh her worth. She dismounted in the outer yard. Soft drizzle freckled her helm as she surveyed the space. Rubble mounds, grass slick, puddles reflecting gray sky. We make this a fortress of peace, she said. Ned nodded, barking orders. Within hours, men cleared debris, raised pavilions, hung banners. Trout of Tully, Falcon of Arryn, Kraken of Greyjoy, Sun and Spear of Martell, arrived at last under Parley flag, rose crowned with golden roses for Reach envoys, and a blank white field reserved for Targaryen. Some sneered at that, Lyanna insisted. An empty seat reminds all what war births. Evening found her in the Hall of 100 Hearths, now 20 still usable, addressing stewards. Candlelight wavered on carved pillars scorched black centuries earlier. She spoke of schedule, security, neutrality. Lords accepted or grumbled. Greyjoy's envoy scoffed until Stannis' glare wilted him. Before dispersing, Prince Doran Martell's chair scraped floor. Gout swollen, swathed in orange, he bowed as deeply as joints allowed. Lady Lyanna, he said, voice soft as falling sand. Your envoy Ashara Dane saved a caravan of Dornish mothers from bandits on the march here. Sunspear remembers such grace. Lyanna inclined her head. I grieve every loss Dorne suffered. I pray this council spares more. His dark eyes weighed her. May it be so. When the hall emptied, Lyanna lingered by the hearth where greenish flames danced, strangely tinted mortar causing the hue. She touched the fresh bandage below her collar, felt scar tissue stiffen. Beneath her hand she sensed not pain but promise. A line carved into flesh that would forever remind her of the edge narrowing between peace and chaos. Footsteps behind. Ashara, dust-streaked from journey, Dawn's pale blade across her back. She bowed. Sentinel stands, she reported in their old Tower of Joy code, meaning success. Doran votes peace. But his spear sister Ilaria whispers for blood. And no, blood enough spilled, Lyanna replied. Blood yet hungers, Ashara warned. They clasped forearms sister-like. The day of reckoning dawned crisp, brittle. Lords gathered under canvas roof stretched between Widow's Tower and burned Kingspire. At center stood a massive round table cobbled from wagon planks. Neutral, unadorned. Seats arranged by seniority, an open space behind each for advisors. At table's heart lay the dragon crown in its velvet sack, untouched since Robert stowed it. But beside it rested another, a simple silver circlet wrought overnight by rivermen smiths, crowned with a single polished piece of translucent blue crystal, reminiscent of ice. Lyanna reached the pavilion last, dressed in muted steel and gray cloak. Murmurs rippled. She took the unmarked seat opposite Robert. Tywin on her right, Ned on her left. At once, argument erupted. Balin Greyjoy demanding control of his own tides. Tully pleading harvest relief. Mace Tyrell's envoy extolling Reach Coin as solution for any crown's needs. Martell voiced grievances. Elia and children. Aaron coughed through pleas for stability. Words clashed like blades. Lyanna listened, hands folded. When rancor peaked, she rose. "I hear lords jockey for advantage," she said, voice ringing across the timber roof. "But small folk ask simpler things. Safety to sow. Ships to trade, justice to trust. Crowns matter less than conduct." Murmurs died. Some approving, others wary. "I slew the mad king to prevent the city's burning, but regicide grants no birthright. If this council judges me criminal, I will kneel and yield myself to trial by combat or mercy. If instead you deem my act salvation, then let us craft a charter that binds ruler to ruled, lord to small folk, so no future king or queen may hoard wildfire under beds." She set a parchment roll upon the planks. "Articles of Accord," she announced. "Drafted with counsel from Stannis Baratheon, Jon Arryn, and Maester Luwin of Winterfell. It limits levy sizes in peacetime. Requires quarterly audits of royal finances by representatives from each great house. Guarantees the faith-free judgment over septi matters, and grants smallfolk right of petition without fear of reprisal." She met Tywin's gaze. "And it establishes a council of regency able to depose a monarch who violates these laws." Gasps. Tywin's eyes narrowed, calculating. "I will sign today," she declared, "regardless of who wears the crown." Ned stood beside her, unrolling his copy. "The North seconds this." Stannis rose, austerot. The Stormlands add voice. Jon Arryn's steward spoke for the Eyrie. Dorne Martell considered, then nodded, pain flitting across features. Dorne concurs, with amendment ensuring southern ports remain unfettered. Lyanna inclined head, agreed. Suddenly the tide shifted. Mace Tyrell, seeing future markets, signaled assent. Greyjoy abstained. For now, but others leaned forward, hungry for stability. Robert watched, with storm-calm eyes. When silence settled, he rose and took the dragon crown from its sack. "This bauble birthed ruin," he said, turning it so rubies caught sun. "I sought it in anger, for vengeance. For love I feared lost, but love stands here." He lifted the crown toward Lyanna, then placed it on the table. "I pledge my claim to the council's decision." Tywin's breath hissed. Jaime's gauntlet creaked. Lyanna's pulse hammered. She unstrapped her direwolf and rose brooch, set it beside the crowns. "Let the lords deliberate. I withdraw." She stepped back. Ned followed. Chairs scraped. Barristan and Renly guided her to a side pavilion where Greywind waited, worrying a rawhide. She knelt, burying hands in his fur, anchoring. Inside, voices rose, fell, folded into one another like storm tides. Hours passed. Sunset bled across the god's eye, turning ruined towers to pillars of fire. Torches flickered alive beneath pavilion roof. At last, bells chimed thrice, the agreed signal. Lyanna entered again. The council stood. Jon Arryn, steadied by Mester's arm, spoke. "Woo, the lords paramount and assembled peers have debated claims. We declare the crown shall pass by merit of deed and accept the Articles of Accord as binding law. By majority, we proclaim Lyanna Stark, the protector of the realm and queen of the Seven Kingdoms." Men? D. A hush deeper than winter night fell. Then thunderous applause, mixed with a few mutters. But applause prevailed. Ned's eyes shone. Robert's face glowed with pride tinged by loss. Tywin bowed. Shallow but unmistakable. Even Balin dipped head. A raider acknowledging tide's inevitability. Barristan stepped forward bearing the simple silver crown. "Your Grace," he said, voice solemn. She knelt. The circlet descended. Chill at first, then warming against brow. When she rose, torches flared on gust of rising wind. She faced the hall. Sight blurred by tears she did not wipe away. "I accept," she said softly. "Not as dragon nor wolf, but as woman of this realm. May I serve you with justice, guard you with steel, and bear always the weight of waking dreams." The lords cheered, but beyond the pavilion, she heard distant thunder, real or omen she could not tell. She wondered whether viceroys felt the tremor across the sea, whether unborn plots coiled in shadowed corners of the ruin, whether the accords would hold against greed's tide. Yet in that breath she embraced uncertainty, for it proved the realm lived. Night cloaked Harrenhal, and new banners unfurled, silver crown on winter-gray field. Under them, torches traced patterns of hope across shattered stone. Lyanna Stark, now Queen Lyanna I, walked into the dark-lit courtyard where north and south mingled, where children chased each other between tents, where Ashara's lute offered gentle song. She lifted her scarred shoulder to the stars and whispered a vow older than thrones. "Winter will come, and when it passes, spring shall know my name. Nandasau. Ah, Kandi." The pavilions of Harrenhal folded like wilted lilies beneath a rising sun, and the exodus of banners resembled strange migration. Colorful birds winging outward across sodden earth, trailing promises behind them, like frayed streamers. By the 5th day after the vote, only 3 great camps remained within the broken walls. The North's patchwork city of gray, felt, and wolf-tooth pennants. The Stormland's robust swath of black and gold. And a lean crimson wedge belonging to House Lannister. Still sharp as a drawn dagger, though the scabbard of purpose that had carried it here now lay empty. Workmen from the Trident villages hurried everywhere, salvaging wagon loads of timber and iron spikes, abandoned when lesser lords decamped. Their axes rang glad music against charred beams, each blow a small joyous plunder from history's grave. Queen Lyanna watched the bustle from a stone balcony high in the Widow's Tower, elbows braced upon the mossy parapet. Beneath her, the vast yard had become a living map of the realm's newest order. Smiths from Gulltown quarreling amiably with miners of the Westerlands over which of them might claim a stack of half-melted armor plates. A Martell courier passing wineskins to Baratheon scouts while they traded jokes about how many lances it took to fell a kraken. A silent ring of Ironborn disassembling their black tents with the precise gloom of Altogether, a motley kingdom breathing in unison. The silver crown sat heavy upon her unbound hair. It felt cooler than the dragon circlet had looked, cooler and more dangerous, because the weight it signified came not from bloodline but from faith newly pledged. She could feel that faith pressing against her skull, a living thing that might shift at any misstep. The thought steadied her more than it frightened her. Faith could be guided the way a rider eased a skittish mare. Press lightly on the rein, never jerk, whisper forward. Morning haze clung to the god's eye, turning its waters into polished pewter. Somewhere in that mist, a lone swan honked, unseen yet impossibly present. And Lyanna's mind leapt northward. She pictured White Harbor's long quays where the wind smelled of spruce tar and salted cod. The docks that would soon receive letter after letter sealed with her new signet. She pictured Moat Cailin drowning in lily-choked moats, imagined ravens sweeping south carrying the proclamation that the King's Road must be refitted before the first snows, not after. And beyond even that, she pictured the wall, ragged and towering against pale sky, its garrison thinned by years of war and neglect. Winter would come. It always did. And the wall must stand ready, or the rest would crumble, no matter who wore what on their head. Boots sounded in the stair behind her. Soft, deliberate. Ned emerged, gray cloak thrown back from his shoulders despite the lingering damp. "Dawn's wasted on scribes today," he said. "They've quarreled since midnight over the first line of your coronation writ. We, the assembled peers, or woo, the Lord sworn. Lord Hoster insists peers, sounds grander." Lyanna smiled. "Let him have it. A grand word costs us nothing." Ned moved beside her. Tywin's riders leave within the hour. He requested a final audience before they strike the encampment. He's too well-bred to call it tribute, too practical to call it surrender, too proud to call it obedience, Ned added. Lyanna's breath turned white in the air, though the morning lay warm. Send him, she said, but keep Barristan at my side when he comes. On day, Tywin arrived, draped in crimson, as though the color alone could bleach the surrounding ruin to something neat and Lannister-shaped. Jaime escorted him but remained outside the small council chamber, leaning against a time-battered merlon, whistling tunelessly at passing pigeons. Within, the hall smelled of damp parchment, clove oil, and the faint metallic tang of the lake pressing cold fingers through fissures in the stone. Barristan stood behind Lyanna's left shoulder. Ned loomed at her right, the intangible heartbeat of Winterfell echoing with every breath he took. Tywin did not bow deeply, only a precise inclination that might have been courtesy or a subtle reminder that kings and queens died, but gold endured. "Your Grace," he said, voice gleaming as freshly honed steel. "My household returns west to put affairs in order. Lannisport has suffered privateering since the fleet was diverted to Dragonstone. If raiders still harry our shores come spring, trade to King's Landing will slow. We shall escort your first convoy with royal dromons," Lyanna offered at once. "Lord Stannis commands the Blackwater and can spare 2 ships. Merchants will trust such banners." Tywin's lids half lowered in the faintest show of surprise. "Generous. In return, House Lannister remits the crown 10 tons of wheat and 3 of gold coin, to be delivered before snow closes the passes. Bendenderall. What price hangs on that generosity?" Ned asked. "None, Lord Stark. The realm requires seed more than intrigue this year." Tywin's gaze flicked toward Lyanna's scar, but he did not let it rest there. "Yet while generosity costs nothing, certainty costs armies. I wish to see the articles ratified in King's Landing before winter. The common folk will not believe until ink dries in the capital." "Your scribes are swift," Lyanna said. "Mine as well. We shall ride south within the fortnight. The small council will sit before the first frost. Then your reign may last," Tywin concluded. He stepped back, signified with nothing more than silence that the interview had ended. Lyanna leaned forward. "One matter more. You will leave Sir Jaime to command the city watch through winter. His presence will speak rule of law, not conquest." Jaime's laugh drifted faintly from the parapet. Tywin's jaw flexed. "My son serves at your pleasure," he said, clipped, then turned on his heel, cloak snapping behind him in rippling pools of scarlet. Barristan let out a breath when the chamber door closed. "Do I court a lion's bite?" Lyanna asked, half turning to the King's Guard. "Perhaps," Barristan answered. "But better the first nip on your terms than the second on his." And so, preparations sped like an ox become a stag. Lists unfurled longer than banners. Which houses would provide grain? Which would lend coin? Which must supply men to rebuild the city walls, still pitted by siege stones? Maester Pycelle, finally recovered from a gouty foot, shuffled parchments thicker than his mealy jowls. Stannis counted hulls moored at Storm's End, wrote stern missives commanding captains to swear direct to Queen, not Lord. Renly charmed carpenters into pledging to roof every collapsed sept within the capital, promising tournaments to inaugurate each dome once the snows melted. Night by night, Lyanna slept little, reading reports by candlelight, Grey Wind dozing at her feet. Varys' ravens brought slimmer rolls now. Smugglers turned away, plague small, sellsword companies broken. Yet each scrap of ink felt icy, a drip of thread sliding along her spine. She began each dawn with sword practice in the ash-gravel courtyard. Barristan sparred lightly, instructing her footwork. Sometimes Jaime replaced him, grinning with dangerous mischief yet never striking to wound. Lyanna welcomed both styles. Steel taught truths quicker than scrolls. That overextension invites a counter. That one bold feint can unmask an army's hesitance. That speed mattered less than timing, which was merely confidence disguised. One cold morning while they drilled, a horn wailed from the lakeshore. A black sail galley ghosted out of mist, crimson sun rising behind it like bloodstain. Barristan's hand snapped to hilt. Lyanna tilted her head. "That prow? See the sigil?" Barristan asked. "A wyvern argent," Jamie supplied from the wall-walk. House Celtigar of Claw Isle. The galley cut water swift as a quarrel. A longboat dropped, bearing a hooded figure flanked by oarsmen in dun leather. When the stranger reached the slipway, Lyanna and her guard waited at the flooded quay that once fed Harrenhal's river gate. The visitor cast back his hood. Pale hair, white as beach foam, cascaded to his shoulders. His face bore hard lines etched by salt wind, yet eyes flickered violet beneath heavy lids. A color Westeros had not seen in an open air since Blackfire pretenders died in smoke. He knelt. "Your Grace, I am Orain Celtigar, last lord of a battered isle. Word reached us at Dragonstone. The Mad King is dead, but his scion still lives and sails east. My kinsmen ask refuge. I bring terms." Lyanna gestured him up. "Speak." Viserys fled with a wet nurse and a handful of knights. They think to land in Tyrosh. I can give you their prows, their oaths, if you grant Claw Isle exemption from war levies 5 years and confirm our title. Then? Ned's voice came quiet as falling snow behind her. And if we refuse? Orain met him without flinching. Then I sell the same knowledge to the Iron Bank, who will sell it again to the highest bidder. Perhaps the Sellsword captain now courting the boy for a second Blackfire adventure. Lyanna studied the man. He shook, but not with fear. Only exhaustion. Salt crust glinted in his beard. "You'll swear loyalty to me, to the crown that feeds my people. Bring your refugees downriver to King's Landing. You will pay no war levy for 5 years, but tithe 10% of every pearl harvest instead. The crown will place a royal officer on Claw Isle to oversee terms." Orain's knuckles whitened, but he bowed. "Done." Lyanna offered her forearm. He clasped it. Agreements sealed beneath dawn felt older than parchment. When Orain had gone, Ned exhaled a cloud. "We show mercy to the realm's oldest bloodline while bartering their safety. Some will cry sacrilege. Then shall. Let them," Lyanna said. "I would rather cradle the last embers of a fire than leave it to light reckless torches." She meant Viserys, that flickering spark adrift on the narrow sea. But she meant herself as well. Still a small, cold coal inside that could flare into something terrible if someone breathed the wrong way. "Oh, honey." 2 days later, the rain returned, slanting like thrown spears. The camps became mires of trampled hay. Horses coughed. Smith fires hissed. Roofers cursed at shingles that would not take pitch. In the gloom, a hooded rider galloped through the west gate, cloak flapping like a torn wing. By the time he reached the Widow's Tower, Lyanna already waited beneath the archway, drawn by some tug in her chest she could not name. Benjen Stark flung back his hood, cheeks raw from wind. "Sister," he said, voice cracking. She folded him into her arms. For a moment, she was no queen, no murderess of monarchs, only the girl chasing wolves across frosted moors. Their embrace smelled of wet wool and pine resin. He pulled away first. "Ravens fly slower than rumor. I would see with my own eyes." "Then Chowan, you rode from Winterfell?" "From Moat Cailin in 10 days." She touched his sleeve. "Winterfell stands." "For now," he answered. "But the Barrow roads already freeze at night." Supplies thin. The Karstarks grumbled that their wagons go south instead of east toward home. Lyanna led him into the hearth chamber, threw fresh wood on the blaze. They sat cross-legged upon bearskins. "Tell me all," she said. Benjen did. Of petty quarrels over captured merman nets near the Fingers. Of wildling sightings east of the Shadow Tower. Of a pox in Deepwood Moat cured only because a passing singing woman knew which pine sap to boil. He spoke of banners burned in memory of Brandon and their father, yet also of small folk lighting candles at the weirwood for the Lady Wolf who sits a silver throne. When he finished, she clasped his calloused hands. "You'll ride south with us? Sit on council?" He shook his head. "The Night's Watch needs recruiters. I mean to take the Black this very autumn. Then, someone must guard the far north while the realm rebuilds." Uncle Willem wrote me. The watch is naught but graybeards and thieves. Winter is coming. You know it truer than any. Let me hold that line. Tears pricked her eyes, hot as wildfire. You choose exile? I choose duty. He smiled, half boy and half stern man. You taught me that on the day you stole father's sword to chase bandits off our land. Duty is the marrow. She hugged him again, fiercely. Then go. But this queen names you her voice on the wall. Any raven you send flies faster than all others. Mendero. And any fool who ignores my words will answer to you. He kissed her brow. I like that. Endel. Departure finally came on a dawn devoid of ceremony. Clouds bruised the sky. The god's eye lay mirror still. Queen Lyanna's procession threaded the west gate. Wolf banners, stag banners, the silver crown glinting through layers of plain gray hood. Robert rode at her side, hungover but cheerful, jesting with guards. Ned directed baggage wagons. Jaime policed the rear, Lannister crimson startling amid northern earth tones. Ashara Dane rode near the head, dawn wrapped again, her hair bound in a coronet of hammered silver. She claimed once adorned Nymeria's lieutenants. They followed the King's Road south through fields already cut for autumn. Scarecrows wore battered helms. Children waved from hedgerows. Lyanna ordered stops at every village large enough to muster a square. There she spoke brief, firm words about seed grain, about justice courts to resume after winter, about traveling judges from each great house, so Northmen would meet Dornish in common cause of law. She promised nothing she could not deliver, yet each promise was seed enough, and the faces brightened. At Maidenpool, a crowd greater than the market square could hold gathered before the gatehouse. They cheered her name until she dismounted and walked among them. A fisher crone pressed a silver star into her palm. Heirloom of a daughter drowned years prior. Keep it, the woman said. It has looked for valiant hands to hold it again. Lyanna pinned the star beside her direwolf clasp and thanked the woman by name. Tamara. When she rode on, the old crone wept, but not of sorrow. King's Landing shimmered ahead as they crested the ridge. A city still wounded. The King's Forest outside the walls lay hacked bald for siege works. Towers gaped black-eyed. The Sept's new spire rose half-complete against a smoky sky. Yet the wall stood, lorded over by fresh-painted standards. Lannister red and gold, Stormlands black and gold, Stark gray-white, and, newest of all, an argent crown on winter gray, flown from the Holdfast's highest turret. Lyanna inhaled a breath that smelled of bay salt and brick dust and wood smoke. Home. For now. Crowds surged as the procession crossed the Lion Gate, but disciplined gold cloaks, drilled by Sir Jaime these past weeks, contained them without blood. Lyanna's first glimpse inside the city brought a greater surprise than any riot. Small gardens had sprouted in ruins where wildfire had scorched. Pocket plots of spinach, songwort, beans. Children knelt watering them from cracked goblets, overseen by septas, in patched habits. The queen slowed her horse. A smith's apprentice proudly waved a spade like a knight's word. Soldiering the soil, she mused, and felt hope quicken. Maegor's holdfast bristled with scaffolds. Stonemasons replaced severed gargoyles. Wheelbarrows hauled mortar under watch of Tyrell foremen. Inside, corridors once rancid with smoke now sang with saws. The throne room's melted chandeliers lay piled to be recast, and new stained glass panes leaned wrapped in straw, awaiting installation. Scenes of Nina Nymeria's arrival, of Bran the Builder raising the wall, of Garth's green hand coaxing barley from rock. History remade to fit dozens of lineages, not just one. Lyanna refused to sit the Iron Throne till it gleamed clean of cinder and rust. Instead, she convened her small council in the Tower of the Hand, accepting Tywin's suggestion that quartering their deliberations away from thrones might give stronger air to breathe. The first meeting smelled of limewash and ink. Present, Ned Stark named Hand, Stannis Baratheon confirmed Master of Ships, Barristan Selmy Lord Commander, Varys reinstated Master of Whisperers. Master of Coin remained unfilled, though Tywin recommended temporary stewardship. Renly volunteered, half jesting, and to many surprise Lyanna appointed him. Someone must charm the tax ledgers into paying themselves. They worked through dusk. Tywin tallied cost of grain shipments. Renly suggested festivals funded by Reach wineries. Varys murmured about troublesome pockets where men still sewed dragon banners in secret. Stannis wanted a harbor levy to repair long piers. Ned argued for road crews. Lyanna listened, then chose. Roads before piers, but 1/10 of the levy for each repair. Dragon banners tolerated as mourning cloth for 6 moons, then banned. She closed the meeting with a decree to audit all wildfire caches quarterly. Barristan's weathered grin told her she'd struck somewhere between too bold and not enough. That night, above the torchlit city, she stood on the same balcony Eris had once watched from. The Iron Throne loomed behind her, now polished, serrated edges glittering like frost. She did not sit. Instead, she placed a rose on its seat, a winter rose grown in glasshouse north of White Harbor. Petals white streaked pale blue. She set it there as reminder, not of mercy but of cost. A single life can become tinder if left unguarded. Then she turned away and descended to her bedchamber, where Greywind awaited with head on paws, amber eyes guarding dreams. And no. In the weeks that followed, the rhythm of governance settled like sediment in deep water. Each day became a pattern: early sword practice, council, midday audiences, twilight ride along the Blackwater embankment, where stonecutters raised new breakwaters. Robert lingered to spar or drink or plan a wedding to which Lyanna kept giving no definitive reply. She worried marriage might knit the kingdom, but feared it might also smother her independence. Vows too easily became cages. Letters flew. From Dragonstone, Stannis reported the capture of Lord Celtigar's promised ships. 3 cogs loaded with nannies and restless knights who swore themselves to Lyanna once convinced they would not be flayed. From Sunspear came formal condolences and a casket of blood-orange blossoms. Prince Doran accepted the accords. But his younger brother Oberyn wrote separately, threatening retribution should Elia's ghosts be forgotten. Lyanna penned a reply equal parts empathy and iron. The realm has memory now, and I tend its ledger. North wind sharpened. Grey Harbor boasted first frost. Ravens carried wisping feathers across half the continent. Tywin's weak convoy arrived on schedule, escorted by Birthing Dawn and Warhammer, 2 Blackwater Dromons whose figureheads, crafted in haste to amuse Robert, depicted stylized dire wolf and stag rearing back to back. Merchants sang ballads of sighting them beating up river like twin comets. Coin poured into port excises. Renly preened over balance sheets. Even dour Stannis admitted the royal mint might strike new copper pennies in spring. Yet calm never lingered long. Rumors buzzed that Balon Greyjoy rallied captains on Great Wyke. Unhappy, the Queen meddled with longship quotas. A rider from Old Town reported the High Septon died in his sleep. Some claimed poison, leaving the faith ready to test the new monarchy's authority. Worse, word reached court that a sellsword company called the Golden Company had offered Viserys Targaryen shelter in Tyrosh. Gold dragons glimmered again in tavern whispers. One spark could reignite war. Lyanna called her council at once. She ordered Stannis to blockade the narrow sea with every hull he could spare. Commanded Varys to buy any contract within the Golden Company offering. Dispatched Ashara Dane back to Dorne with sealed writs inviting Oberyn to serve as ambassador in capital. Let him watch justice forged, not rumor. Ned prepared ravens urging all northern houses to keep 2 months' provisions ready in holdfasts. This is how you fight a rumor, he said, with bread and patience. Winter officially arrived when the first snow fell upon King's Landing. Rare, lacy flakes that melted before they kissed tile, but portent enough. That night, Lyanna dreamed of white fields and blackened skies, of a sound like steel shearing crystal. She woke gripping the wolf-rose brooch so tightly that one garnet eye cracked. Morning brought news that Benjen Stark had reached Castle Black, taken vows before Hearttree, and already ridden with a ranging party toward Frostfangs. Lyanna stared long at his letter, at the inky shape of his name, feeling both pride and dread swirl like wolves in her belly. The letter's last line read, "If you feel the wall between crown and duty leaning, remember which side bears your weight." She folded it into the winter rose's petals and placed both in her journal. Time wove onward. The queen's retinue traveled the riverlands come thaw, mending levees, adjudicating land disputes, establishing a tribunal system binding lords to abide by majority vote of their peers, rather than reach for sword first. In River Run, she knelt beside a fisherwoman's grave, speaking the woman's name 3 times. Tamara, so grief could hear itself answered. In the Reach she accepted 1,000 barrels of summer wine toward the capital's rebuild, but insisted Tyrell's engineers train crown carpenters, not replace them. She let Willis Tyrell, still cane-bound from tourney accident, ride her mare around the stews of Bitterbridge. His laughter returned echoing off river reeds. Respect blossomed across rivalries. One crisp dawn outside Tumbleton, her guard caught an archer hiding in hay stump, with a Blackfire sigil sewn beneath tunic. Under oath he confessed a cell in lease had offered coin enough to buy 3 ships if he loosed on the queen. She spared his life, but branded the dragon of his sigil with a heated coin of her new mint, her own face blazing against the worn dragon. "Bear the mark and choose," she told him. "Carry it in shame or pride at mercy." The archer wept. Barristan doubted him, but the queen said, "A marked man is known, a hidden one is peril." In Goldenheart Forest, a dire wolf pack shadowed her column for days. Greywind trotted at her stirrup, ears cocked, nose twitching. The pack kept distance, yellow eyes bright between trunks at dusk. On the night they vanished, a she-wolf's howl rolled through camp so lonely even Robert grew quiet. Lyanna lay awake listening until the stars rotated overhead, pondering which parts of her soul had returned to the wild. When dawn came, fresh prints circled the royal tent. She traced one print with gloved fingers, deeper than Greywind's, claws long. She whispered a blessing, old words wordless really, and rose to address another day of scrolls. High summer of her first rain year found King's Landing blooming. Peach trees lined the street of silk. Peddlers hawked rose cakes shaped like snowflakes in honor of the Winter Queen. A new bell tower overlooking the river bore 3 bells christened Mercy, Memory, and Morning Getagdi. Lyanna insisted each ring alone save on feast days, so their distinct notes would teach the city to distinguish peace from alarm. Merchants carved those notes onto flutes. Children learned them quicker than catechisms. Yet outside the walls, the world still shifted. Letters from Old Town announced coronation of a new High Septon. One humble Huthred, famed for leading barefoot processions through Firewine Hills. His first edict demanded the crown investigate rumors of unnatural magics used when the Mad King died. "A king can be slain by lawful blade," Huthred wrote. "But a woman wielding Valyrian steel smacks of witchcraft." The small folk laughed, remembering Lyanna's open scar and calloused hands. The court bristled. Tywin advised ignoring fanatics. Ned counseled meeting the faith halfway. Lyanna chose a third path. She invited Huthred to debate scripture in the capital. Publicly, before winter's end. Preparations consumed the autumn. A great dais was raised in the Dragon Pit, symbolic venue once housing the beasts Aegon's Line rode. Carpenters set benches for 10,000. Scribes inked handbills. The realm buzzed. Some expected spectacle, others feared riot. Robert promised extra casks of Arquinus red to lighten the crowd's mood. Stannis glowered. When the day came, clouds rolled heavy and low, but no rain fell. The Dragon Pit smelled of fresh-cut cedar planks and olive oil torches. Lyanna wore simple wolf-gray dress and no weapon. High Septon Huthred entered barefoot indeed, white beard sweeping his chest, eyes like flint. He bowed respectfully. The debate began. Scripture citations, histories, ethics. Huthred argued that prophecy ordained Targaryens. To break that chain invited wrath of our lore or worse. Lyanna countered, quoting the faith's own tales of the 7 rewarding mercy, not bloodline. She spoke of wildfire jars stacked beneath children's beds by the ordained king. She spoke of 10,000 small lives weighed against one royal life. She admitted killing Eris, but denied magic. Only courage, desperation, and dark sister's edge. Her words flowed measured, never defensive. Hours passed. Evening's first star peered through the broken dome. Huthred paused. Shoulders bowed. He announced he found no blasphemy in courage, nor sin in mercy. He knelt before her. The crowd erupted. Roar of approval, relief, tears. That night, the bells of mercy rang alone. Pure and high. Queen Lyanna walked the quiet ramparts, listening to Robert joined her, sober for once. He carried 2 cups of mulled wine. "They cheer you," he said. "Some cheer me as well, but mostly you." She tasted the wine, clove and cinnamon. Cheering must lead to building, or it turns to riot. I'd still like a wedding feast while the cheering's strong. His grin was soft, uncertain. Lyanna leaned on the parapet. Below, torchlines curled along the river like fiery serpents. Her heart beat loud in her ears. She had delayed long, partly fear, partly strategy. But as she stared at the lights, she realized strategy now favored union, yet fear no longer ruled her. "Spring," she said. "When the snows melt, a wedding among blossoms." Robert's eyes lit brighter than any torch. "I'll plant a forest of them." He kissed her knuckles. And now, winter bit hard that second year. Sweeping blizzards south past the neck, icing Blackwater Bay. Yet King's Landing endured, granaries brimmed. The soup kitchens Renly funded with tournament proceeds fed thousands. Snow lay on city roofs like linen cloth on funeral bier, but beneath, chimneys smoked steadier than in peacetime years. Lyanna spent mornings among carpenters raising new orphan hospice on Rhaenys Hill. She swung hammer alongside them, gray wind pawing snow into airy powder. Ravens from the wall brought tidings unsettling. Benjen's ranging lost 2 men to something white and silent. He wrote no more, but the parchment smelled of resin and fear. Lyanna read it before the small council. Varys spoke of wild tales north of Skagos. Barristan urged dispatching grain to Castle Black. Ned argued for labor levies to rebuild the Night Fort. Fear keeps men sharp, walls keep men alive. Tywin frowned, but agreed the cost was small next to realm's safety. The council voted to send architects and masons north come thaw. Spring returned timid, warily. Crocuses thrust through muddy snowdrifts, gulls wheeled high. On the first truly warm day, Robert burst into the council chamber, waving a gaudy scrap of parchment. "The Tyrells have bred blue roses for the ceremony." Lyanna laughed and signed the trade release. The royal wedding occurred on the last day of the 3rd moon. The sept of Baelor, ray-vaulted, re-glassed, shone like a lantern. High Septon Huthred himself joined their hands. Lyanna wore not the traditional maiden's cloak, but a mantle of winter wolf fur lined inside with Baratheon gold silk. The cloak to show union of realms, not surrender of identity. Robert's cloak bore direwolf embroidery along the hem. Their vows echoed under marble arches. Outside, streets rang with bells until the noise became ocean roar. Varys later claimed half the brothels turned away customers, because even lust paused to listen. Feast followed. 7 courses, each from a different region. Crannog eel pie with lemon, Dornish peppers stuffed with goat cheese, island crab and honey glaze. Bards sang, dwarfs juggled. Pycelle nodded off. Renly danced with Ashara. Jaime partnered with Brienne Tarth, newly arrived to seek a place in Queensguard, causing Tywin's eyebrow to twang. Late, after last toast, Lyanna and Robert slipped away to the Godswood. There, before a transplanted sapling heart tree just taking root, they exchanged private vows. To speak truth even when painful. To let their crowns share weight, not shift it. They sealed with kiss tasting of apple cider and night air. And marriage changed them in small, surprising ways. Robert drank less. Hunted less recklessly. He rose earlier to ride patrols with gold cloaks, returning caked in stable dust, but grinning. Lyanna found comfort in his laughter, though she kept her own circles of duty and reflection untouched. Council quills seldom paused. She insisted on reading ledgers herself, yet she also learned to delegate. Allowed Renly to oversee street festivals, Ned to appoint river judges, Stannis to restructure harbor fees. She asked Tywin's advice and sometimes heeded it, sometimes not. When she did not, He accepted without visible rancor. Gold-like stable markets. Viserys Targaryen remained ghost on eastern horizon. Varys reported he lived frugally under Tyroshi bankers' patronage, nursing resentment. The Golden Company eyed him, but signed no contract, while Queen's coffers bought their silence. Still, Lyanna sensed a future shaped by that ember. She ordered smitheries to forge extra spears, directed maesters to stock wildfire vaults with seawater instead of oil, just in case. Children came to the court, wards to guarantee peace, Willis Tyrell and Daisy Mormont among them. Pages and maids, fosterlings bridging blood feuds. The Red Keep echoed with young laughter. In evenings, Lyanna often joined them in sword forms or archery. She told ghost stories round hearths, leaving out the worst endings because these were days to seed hope. One night, as she finalized grain tariffs, a little girl delivered a bundle, a small direwolf pup of pitch-black fur, orphaned near Maidenpool. Lyanna named her Storm Sister and raised her alongside Greywind, teaching city men that wolves could pace marbled halls as well as woods. Years turned. Though threats rose, Ironborn raid on the Arbor repelled by Stannis. Plague flare in Fair Isle quenched by new Hospitallers. The realm endured. The Articles of Accord held beneath scrutiny. Lannister gold rebuilt roads. Tyrell grain fed orphans. Dornish water gardens welcomed northern traders bearing pine resin. Slowly the scars of war faded, replaced by new lines of connection. One crisp autumn evening, standing upon the repaved Roserad, Lyanna watched a caravan roll by bearing furs from Last Hearth and oranges from Sunspear in the same wagon, and she thought, "This is the song Rhaegar tried to play." Pregnancy finally found her in the fourth spring. Quiet. Insistent. She told Robert beneath the heart tree. His roar of joy shook sparrows from branches. When the babe quickened, she pressed Robert's hand to her belly where small feet fluttered. He wept. They announced it at midsummer feast. Bells rang so long that sailors claimed the sea itself chimed. But along with joy came shadows. Nights. Lyanna dreamed of pale riders crossing ice fields, their eyes sapphires, their swords giving no heat yet burning. In dawn's half-light she wrote letters north, urging Benjen caution. No reply came for months. Then a raven with black-barred plumage arrived, bearing a single parchment scrap. Frost fells all songs. Remember the wall. No name, but Benjen's cramped hand. Lyanna read it in the council. Silence thicker than snows followed. She decreed immediate shipment of dragonglass daggers, rumored in obsidian stores on Dragonstone. Stannis sailed next tide. Robert grumbled. Tywin scoffed myth. But Lyanna persisted. Somewhere inside she felt the world pivoting again toward cold, toward dark. The babe was born on the darkest night of that year. Midwinter moon cloaked by racing clouds. Snow whirled around the Red Keep like ghost ash. Lyanna labored in a tower chamber hung with wolf pelts, refusing Myrish potion. She clutched Ashara's hand, roared once, twice. At dawn a sun slid into the world, howling fiercer than wind. Hair black as midnight, eyes startling gray. Robert wept anew, and named him Eddard Rhaegar Baratheon. For the brother and the friend whose ghosts had shaped their path. Lyanna nodded, tears washing her cheeks. The realm fetid for 7 days. But on the 8th, as bells tolled evensong, a new raven hammered at the rookery. Castle Black reported Benjen missing beyond the wall. Rangers found only his cloak snagged on ice. Lyanna received the news alone in the Godswood. She sank to her knees, infant swaddled against her breast, snow freckles melting upon his smooth brow. She whispered Benjen's name, then set her palm to the heart tree's carved face. The weirwood's tears of red sap trickled, mingling with hers. She pressed her forehead to the bark and made a vow beyond crowns or accords, that whatever came out of the cold, whatever ancient darkness stirred, her reign would meet it, not with wildfire, not with madness, but with swords and hearts united across every river and desert and snowfield. She rose, baby clutched close, silver crown glinting faint in dawn's weak flame. Storm Sister paced at her heel. Grey wind howled from the rampart, and the bells of memory tolled once, deep as an ancient heartbeat. Beneath their echo, Queen Lyanna Stark, Wolf Queen, sister, mother, stepped forward to greet the next dawn, determined that this time, when winter came, the realm would stand ready, arm in arm, steel bared against the dark.